Welcome to Seasons of You, a podcast about seasons of change and our ever evolving cyclical nature as women. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'll be sharing my experience of harnessing the power of the cycles as a guide for my life. And I'll be speaking to incredible guests where we'll explore struggles, growth, and expansion, and what inspires us to create and live a life that we truly desire. Get cozy and honour this moment for yourself as we dive in to the seasons of you. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which I live and travel. I give thanks to the Indigenous Australians who have an enduring and deep relationship to the land, skies, and waters of this country. I recognise that sovereignty was never ceded, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I also give thanks to my maternal lineage, to all the women who came before me, and to all those who came before you. Hello, my beautiful listener. Thank you for tuning into this episode today. I am coming to you today from the lands of the Gugu Badoon people. I probably did not pronounce that right, but I am grateful to be on these beautiful lands. I'm in a really beautiful spot. As always, I feel like I say that every time I share about where I am, but we are still up in Queensland, up on another cattle station. We are looking after the farm for the family at the moment who are on holidays. So we have a bunch of animals to look after, a couple of dogs, a pig who thinks it's a dog. It's hilarious. We're just having a really great time in a really beautiful part of the world. We're surrounded by gorgeous mountain ranges and beautiful bushland. There is an amazing amount of wildlife here. There's lots of creeks to go and explore. And it's just really lovely to be, as always, living out in nature and feeling so deeply connected to the land. So I am paying my respects to the traditional custodians of this land and to the farmers whose land that we are on as well, and the way that they look after the land and, the wildlife and animals that live on the land as well. Now, before I jump into today's episode, I just feel called to say a little something. I don't exactly know what's going to come out, but I'm just feeling called to speak on this and just trusting that there is someone out there who needs to hear this. To all the women who are currently feeling burnt out, all the mums who feel like they are constantly living at their limit. I know it feels like right now you're living a life that is not fully your own. And I know how exhausting that is and how soul draining that can be. I know how it can impact your relationships. I know how it can impact your mental health in a really big way and the flow on effects that that can have even into your physical health. And I just want you to know that, for one, you're not alone. I'm seeing this play out in a few different ways in what I'm witnessing. And there are so many women who struggle with this, and I actually think that we would be hard pressed to find a woman who had never experienced this. This is something that I have journeyed through myself, feeling lost, feeling burnt out, feeling like I'm living this life that doesn't feel like my own, or feeling like I'm living a life that I have no part in, feeling like I'm living for everyone else and not for myself. Knowing that I have needs to be met, but finding it hard to figure out what those needs are. And when we don't know what our needs are, it's hard to meet them, let alone communicate about them or carve out the time or ask for support to be able to have those needs met. And that sometimes trying to make that happen can actually feel like a bigger task than it's worth because of all the logistics that need to go into getting us having time for ourselves. And I think a big piece as well is that we don't even know what we want. We don't even know what we desire because we've been trained out of that since we were little girls. And so, how can we ask for what we want when we don't even know it within ourselves? So, if this is you, I just want you to know that I see you, that I have been there, that there are other women there right alongside you, that you are not alone in this, and that things will change. They can change for the better, for the more better than you could ever even imagine. You just need to start believing in yourself as someone who is worthy, as someone who deserves the care that you give so deeply to everyone else. The thoughtfulness, the kindness, the compassion that you pour into others, you deserve that pouring back to yourself as well, from within and from others as well. You can welcome that in and be open to receiving it. So, to all the women who would really love to start trusting themselves, I would invite you to put a hand over your heart and take a deep breath in. Let it out. And connect with yourself in this small way. Taking a breath with your hand on your heart, closing your eyes for even more depth, allowing yourself to be with yourself. It's okay to take a moment to slow down. It's okay to take your foot off the accelerator. It's okay to step off the treadmill. It's okay to look inwards. It's okay to say to everyone else, hang on, I need a minute. It's okay to say to yourself, hang on, I need a minute. Hand on your heart. Deep breath in and repeat after me. I love you. I'm listening. Speak it straight to your heart. I love you. I'm listening. Okay. I don't even know how to now just switch into episode mode. But again, just trusting that whatever I just said, whatever just came out of my mouth, needed to be heard by someone. And from my heart to your heart, I'm sending you so much love. So, this episode, I want to speak to winter. Okay, we're still seasonally in winter in the southern hemisphere. Now, I have felt slightly disconnected to it because we have been traveling and we are in the tropics, and winter has looked quite different for me this year compared to what I'm used to back home in the Adelaide Hills. I know that everyone back home has really been experiencing winter in full force. I know it's been really cold. I know it's been very rainy and it's been a little bit miserable weather-wise and typical, winter vibes. And I've been reflecting a lot on winter this year. It is something that I was really curious to experience in a different way, having moved through seasonal living for a number of years now, but really being connected to the seasons in terms of where I was geographically located back home and using the literal interpretations of winter of where I was, and that being cold, wet, wintry, all those things, to now being separate from that and still moving my way through winter in a place where winter looks so very different weather-wise. So let me take you back a little bit to my pre-cyclical living days before I was, working with the seasons and the cycles. For the longest time, I hated winter. And I think every year it was something that I dreaded. And I know that this is a very common experience for those of us who live in places where it can be quite dreary and miserable. And I don't know, I just always remember thinking, oh my God, like winter's coming, or the days would get shorter and shorter. And it's like I almost felt claustrophobic. And I don't know, I feel like I would get scared of it almost. And yeah, those short days really felt quite constricting and gave me a lot of anxiety, actually. And often I would wonder to myself at some point or multiple points throughout that dip in the year, I would wonder if I had seasonal depression. And so I just dreaded it every year. I dreaded the winter, I dreaded the cold, I dreaded the short days, I dreaded the darkness, like all of it. I just, no part of it did I like. I hated feeling cold. Like I just feel like my muscles were always tensed up and it was not a good time. But then if I kind of reflect on it now with the knowledge that I have around cyclical living and now knowing what is there for us in aligning with the seasons or having seasonal awareness. If I think back to when I was working a 9 to 5, I mean, for one, not set up to work a 9 to 5. I know all of that now, but we go back to those days. Working a 9 to 5, I was commuting to the city. So I would leave as the sun rose and I would get home as the sun set or later, depending on how traffic was. So, like, literally all of my productive, quote unquote, productive hours of the day were, and like daylight, I was in the car and then I was in an office at work. I wasn't really seeing any daylight. So, like, of course, I'm not going to feel great in that. And then, even once I got a job closer to home, and I was only driving sort of 10 to 15 minutes to get to work. So, my commute was a lot closer to home. But then I was trying to like make the most of those 1 to 2 hours of sunlight before work after I woke up. So it was like, I remember getting up and going to the gym before sunrise. And then I'd walk the dog around sunrise roughly in winter. And then I'd get ready for the day and then I'd be at work. So it's like trying to cram everything into that little bit of daylight because then by the time I finished work, it was like sunset was still, on my drive home. Because in winter it sets so early. And so again, I look at that and I'm like, well, no wonder I didn't enjoy it because it's like I spent the best part of the day is working in an office, no connection to outdoors, nature, sunlight. And then the little bit of time that I did get, I was like trying to pack everything in to like meet my needs and the self-care and like all those things. And then if I look at it through the lens of when I was a stay-at-home mum for the first year or two, especially the first year because that was pandemic year. And so I was at home all day alone with a baby. My husband left before sunrise and got home with maybe an hour of sunlight at the end of the day in winter. And I was awake every 2 hours overnight with a very wakeful baby. And so I was not just physically depleted postpartum, which again, I know now so much more that I was physically depleted, and, mentally, emotionally depleted. And then sort of having this like chasm of the day where I was trying to figure out who I was, what I was doing, what this whole motherhood thing was in the chasm of the pandemic. And then we would go into the nights and it just felt endless because the night started at like 5:30 and it was just, felt like a year before sunrise, which would be at about 7:30 in the morning. And I just look back and I think, no wonder I dreaded it. Like those long nights really was so much more intensified when I was in the thick of those early years. And so I guess, I don't know, I'm just acknowledging that for myself and sending so much love and compassion to that version of me who was struggling through winter year after year. But then, fast forward a little bit, I started moving through the wheel of the year with more seasonal awareness. And that is when my relationship with the seasons really changed. So I remember I was moving through these seasonal shifts and I was working with the 8 Sabbats throughout the year. And these are like the anchor points where we can tap into the archetypes of each season and what can be there for us in how to work with it, the challenges, the opportunities, a bit like working with your menstrual cycle and the 4 inner seasons. We can do that on a year scale. And there's these Sabbats every 6-ish weeks throughout the year that become our anchor points for moving through the year seasonally. But I do remember the first year that I was moving through the year in this way. And I still felt a lot of fear as we approached what I now know is the underworld portion of the wheel, or what I call the void. And it's that winter season. I still feared the darkness, the long nights, the really short days. I think that first year I'm also focused on really embracing the cold, um, and like that call to retreat. I think maybe it was probably even the first year of me knowing that I was a projector as well, and going, okay, this might be my season to really give myself permission to retreat, to rest, to, come inwards and take some time for myself and my self care and replenishing my energy and all of that. So I feel like that's what I really focused on a lot that year, and it felt really lovely to do that. But I still did kind of have this like fear of the darkness kind of thing. Still didn't love, the thought of it getting dark so early in the evening, and then, sunrise, feeling like it was just taking forever to get to sunrise. And I do remember using herbalism to support me as well. I used St. John's wort, I think, 2 years in a row for winter. And I think that just really helped to hold me as I was kind of navigating moving through winter in a more empowered way. And I think because I'd learned on a logical level as well some of the themes of winter and what can be here for us, and starting to look at perhaps some of the goddesses that we can work with and things like that, I was a little bit scared of, I guess, stepping into the shadows and doing, what we call shadow work, or it's really about, it's not as scary as it sounded. I used to be scared of it because it sounded scary, but it's like I was I was worried about kind of pulling back the covers and going into my depths and figuring my shit out, I suppose. And like, isn't that scary for everyone? Like, I mean, that can feel quite intimidating when you're new to all of this as well, and uncovering kind of everything that you're doing in breaking your own cycles, in whether it's things like reparenting as we're like raising our kids and sort of figuring out the best way for us to do it, and coming back to ourselves and like all the things, it's really intimidating. And I think that was all sort of wrapped up in it for me. But then I feel like I got through that first year, that first winter, and I realized, I was like, oh, hang on, this isn't actually that scary. Like, it's not scary at all. It's like, oh, again, that permission slip. I get to slow down. I get to come home to myself. I get to do all the introspective thinking, all the reflection, all the journaling, all the like, I was, just getting started on like pulling cards and doing rituals and all of that. I was like, I really get to get witchy with this. And I think that's when I really probably fell in love with all the things that I are now just second nature to me, all the rituals, all of the just going so deep on things. I feel like it all started to alchemize in that first winter. And I shifted out of being like scared of winter and the underworld and the shadows and all of that. And I went, oh, actually, this is a really cool place to hang out. I really enjoyed it. And that surprised me. And so then, having been through it for that first winter and going, okay, I made it through the void, I made it through the depths, and then now spring's here, and now I get to, move into this whole new wheel of the year. And so then moving into the next year of winter, I didn't feel scared. I was like so excited. And then give it another couple of years, and I really came to love winter and the themes that we can move through, especially all the permission to retreat and rest. Again, as a projector, I really needed that. And I really started craving that as we got closer and closer to winter. I was like, oh, yes, my season's coming. And I loved nothing more than sitting by the wood fire with a book and a hot cuppa and just relaxing. It really became my season to tend my inner projector, I think. And then this year is totally different again. We've been traveling. We were in the outback and now we're in the tropics. And for winter solstice itself, I was on the coast in the tropics. So winter solstice did not look like sitting snuggled up by the fire as it has over the last pretty much my whole life. It instead looked like sitting on the beach in the warm sun, which felt really, really strange for me. And I know that leading up to the winter solstice and as we were shifting into the winter season, I felt a little discombobulated being away from winter as I had always known it. But I just got really curious and really tuned into how I was feeling. And I realized that winter looks different depending on where you are in the world. Like, not everyone lives in that southern part of Australia, if we're talking solely about the southern hemisphere. And so, like, winter doesn't always look cold and gloomy, but honoring the light and the days shortening was the way that I stayed connected to the seasonal shifts that I was familiar with, while like constantly observing what was different and then how I was feeling within that as well. And all throughout all of these across the last few years, I have to give a little shout out to Mally, my bestie in all of this. We've moved through the wheels of the year for a few years now, and she's always been my sounding board. And I remember sitting in the outback this year, messaging her, I think sending a voice note saying, I don't know what to do about winter, or, just feeling really like I love this whole wheel of the year thing and moving with the seasons, but I feel really disconnected from it and I don't want to lose that because it's become so important to me. And she, did the amazing thing that she does and reflected back to me and, gave me some tips and pointers and stopped me from spiraling. And, that was where we were able to be like, okay, this is how I'm going to stay connected to winter. So, little shout out to you, Mally. Love you. And I think another part of me that was a little bit unsure about this year's winter is that I had read somewhere at some point that people who chase summer year after year can experience burnout when they're living in that energy of summer over and over again. And of course, I was very keen to avoid that. That is my whole thing now. I am avoiding burnout, doing everything I can. Like I do all of this to prevent myself from burning out because that is just a cycle I am no longer available for. It's just not part of my life anymore. And so I was mindful of that as I was in what felt like summer during winter. But I do think that having had a few years of seasonal awareness under my belt and being so attuned to how I move through the year and how those natural shifts feel in my body as the seasons shift, I was able to remain connected to the season of winter, even though it felt like summer to me, with what the weather was doing. And so I really tuned into how I was feeling the call inwards within myself. And even though it was nice and warm and sunny all day compared to being a bit cold and rainy, because I have that attunement to those subtle feelings, which is something that I have been working on for years now and have been honing more and more each year, I was able to ensure that I honored that rather than it feeling like summer and then like pushing myself, because when the days are longer, it's the peak of the energy and the peak of feeling like we want to be out there doing all the things. And so being able to still honor the fact that I was feeling a bit slower, I was allowing myself more time for rest, more time to slow down even more time to be reflective and inward focused. I actually started napping, or at the very least, laying down with an eye mask when I feel tired, which has been a really beautiful way to rest this winter. I have never done that before. And so I'm very grateful that we have been living a lifestyle that has allowed those physical pauses for me. And so it's just felt like a really different way of tuning into winter energy for me this year. And I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity because I feel like I'm not so single focused on what winter is and not taking it so literally. And I feel like I've embodied this seasonal living and this cyclical living and awareness like one step further through experiencing the seasons in a different way than how I've grown up. And so I'm really grateful for that opportunity because, like I said, not all of us live in places where winter looks like cold, wet, rainy, want to be indoors by the fire. And so I think that's really nice for me to have had that experience. For all of you who are in other parts of the southern hemisphere where winter is actually dry and looks what I would call summery, but like up here where I am, they have the wet and the dry, and it's all just like totally different than what I've ever experienced it. So anyway, I think you get the picture. For winter solstice, I still wanted to really make sure that I honored that time of the year, that void space. And I've talked a bit about the void in social media and things like that, but the void is really that point, that dip in the bottom of the year as you are hitting that winter solstice. The days are short, the nights are long, and energetically, if we allow ourselves to tune into it and allow ourselves to mirror what the earth naturally does, we want to come home. Whether that physically looks like coming to your home, or whether that looks like coming home to yourself, or whether that looks like slowing down, whatever it is, it's this coming inward, and it's really thinking about the depths. And yes, there's the darkness in the long nights and all of that, but it's this metaphorical depths as well, and this slowing down. And if we look at the earth seasons, what the earth is doing in winter, there's not a lot of growth. Like all of the important work that is happening in the earth is actually happening underground. This is where all of the nutrients are happening. Everything that has decayed over autumn, for plants that lose their leaves, or plants that have dropped whatever fruit hasn't been harvested, like everything has decayed into the ground and the earth, and then underneath the surface, the earth is like doing all its goodness in really nourishing that that soil so that it becomes a rich, fertile soil that will nourish growth once spring comes and the root systems go down further. And it's really, that's why we say it's underworld stuff, because it's under the surface. If we look at our gardens, everything's happening under the surface. And this is a good time, unless you're, growing winter veggies, but it's a good time to rest your garden beds and things like that, to regenerate. Like, we don't expect, or we shouldn't expect, our gardens to be producing all year round, because it's not how they work. And obviously, each plant has its own different seasons, but it's the same cycle, right? Each plant is going to have this season, whether it's actually in the middle of winter or not. It's going to have this season where it's not fruiting, where it's not growing. It's doing all this under the ground nourishment within that dark soil, in the darkness underneath where the sunlight doesn't penetrate. And so, circling back to where I was going with this, for the winter solstice, which is that point in the year, the seasonal wheel of the year, where things reset. It's the death, the end of the old year, and the rebirth of the new one. It's a beginning and an end. Like, it has to end before it begins. And so it's a death and rebirth portal. It's the shortest day, the longest night. It's a reset. It's like a sacred reset for the earth, for our energy. And so I really wanted to honor the winter solstice, as I do. And leading into it, I was kind of, if I look at it from my business perspective, I was getting ready to promote and host a winter solstice circle to hold on the winter solstice. And there was a part of me that I could feel within me that was sort of holding back from it. And, one part of me went, okay, well, that's just you trying to self sabotage. Like, your fear is holding you back from wanting to promote this and do this thing in your business. And then there was another part of me, a much more subtle part of me, that was like, no, you need this. Like, you need to actually listen here and honor what I'm trying to tell you. And you actually need to take a break. You can do a circle another time, but you actually need a sacred pause for yourself. And I knew that my parents were actually coming up to visit us. And so I also wanted to be able to spend really good quality time with them, because it's been a while since we've seen them, having been traveling, and it will be a while since we see them again, until we see them again. And so I did make the call sometime in that week before the winter solstice. I went, nah, you know what? I'm stepping back. I'm going to cancel the circle before I go spending the whole week and a half or whatever promoting it. Like, I don't want to be going into a big week of trying to promote it and then, doing all the behind the scenes stuff. Like, I love hosting circles, but I knew that that was not the right time. And I'm so glad that I did that. So I took a week off of social media, and like, I deleted the apps from my phone, and I just took a retreat from that external world and all of those things that are like kind of constantly influencing us, and ways that we can leak our energy as well. And I really took that opportunity to reset my own energy from within. And I had a beautiful holiday with all my favorite people. So not only did my parents come up, but also my sister and brother-in-law surprised us as well and came to visit. And so it was a really beautiful week to really focus on nourishment, which is really what the void is all about. Good food, lots of cups of tea, gentle walks. We had beach time, games, reading, watching comedies for a good laugh. Because really, winter is all about replenishment. I did a small winter solstice circle or ritual with my mum and my sister, and we shared with each other what we were releasing and letting go of as the wheel of the year ended, and then also what we were calling in with the new one beginning and the light returning after the longest night of the year. that's also what winter is about. It's about acknowledging those depths, but then also celebrating and welcoming the return of the light. And so I feel like even though this winter has looked totally different than any other winter I've experienced in my life, it's been so beautiful and it felt so nourishing, especially taking a solid week away from anything that wasn't in my immediate world with me, with my family, and just taking that time to be truly present and to rest and reset and replenish. Especially having done that, this winter has been so beautifully nourishing. And I'm really excited again to be moving through a whole new wheel of the year and all of the seasons. And I feel like as this new wheel of the year begins, we're starting to sort of feel winter kind of pulling us forward in a way, like, well, spring is starting to pull us forward, like the earliest bits of spring just under the surface are like, I don't know, bubbling away, shimmering away, being like, we're nearly ready, we're nearly ready. And so it is a beautiful time to start thinking about any metaphorical seeds that you want to plant. And I feel like for me this year, one of the big ones is embodying this seasonal living and cyclical living in a whole different way because I'm experiencing the actual physical seasons in such a different way. I'll be able to tap even more into more of the archetypes of each season and each Sabbath that we get to throughout the year. I think is just going to allow for even more deep reflection, even more growth and expansion as we move through it. And I just feel really excited to also witness the earth in different places as I continue to move around this beautiful country of ours and looking at, like, okay, well, what does winter look like where I am right now? What does spring look like as it starts to shift into that? And I mean, it's a little bit tricky because I am moving quite regularly. And I do really like to feel deeply connected to the earth in looking at the season and knowing what it looks like and the actual growth of it. But I think to be able to tap more into the themes and the archetypes for my own inner world is a really beautiful opportunity. I just had to take a little pause. I'm not sure exactly what I was talking about or whether I was finished my thought. But anyway, we'll leave it at that. I just got interrupted and had a little bit of a mini internal rage. I'm recording this kind of lately too. So just all the little thoughts of like, can I not just get 1 hour uninterrupted? Like, come on, man, please. Anyway, coming back, taking a breath, letting that go, and considering, I don't know where I was at, but how do I want to wrap this up? I would love to hear from you. Okay, whether you have never heard of this concept of seasonal living and moving through the year in connection with the Earth's seasons and this archetypal way of moving through the year with themes, or whether you have heard a little bit about it and are wanting to learn more, and that's why you're here listening, or whether you have known about it and you've been doing it for a while, I'd love to hear from you. Does this feel like anything for you? Like if you put your hands on your chest, on your heart space, and you close your eyes and you take a breath and you reflect on anything I've shared around, whether it's tuning into winter or just the thought of moving in connection with the seasons throughout the year. How does that feel in your body? I know for me, when I first started learning about this, it felt really exciting. And I just resonated so deeply with it. And I feel like it's because this is a remembered knowledge, right? Like there is a part of you deep within that actually knows all this knowledge. This is ancestral knowledge. This is ancient wisdom that we hold within us. We hold within our DNA for thousands of years. It was passed down from generation to generation until a few hundred years ago. And we hold that within us. And sometimes when we start to learn about it, I think oftentimes it can feel like an awakening, like this knowledge is resonating somewhere in your body, whether it's a tingling or a butterflies in the stomach or a sense of curiosity or like your eyes opening a little bit wider, your breath deepening a little bit more. There's something generally that resonates deep within us because it knows this knowledge and it craves it. We live in this busy, chaotic, hectic world that is so fast paced and is so focused on the next thing and being productive all the time and showing up and showing up and showing up and doing more and moving faster, that when we have these opportunities to connect to a different way of living, a different way of looking at the world, our body knows, I think, especially as women, that this is a better way for us. The earth doesn't bloom all year round, and we are nature, neither do we. We need these opportunities to slow down, to rest, to come back to ourselves, to replenish, to nourish. Just like we need the opportunities to push, to grow, to expand, to bloom. We can't have one all year round, though. Just like the earth, we have to trust in these natural cycles. And when we witness it in the earth, that is our evidence. That is our evidence that we are meant to be cyclical, and then we mirror that back onto ourselves. Whether it's with your inner seasons, with your menstrual cycle, whether it's connecting to the themes and the archetypes of the earth's seasons, whether it's connecting to the moon each month and watching her wax and wane and shift every day. We ebb and we flow. If you resonate more with this than the busy push of mainstream society, I encourage you to listen to whatever part of you is talking to you there. And I'm just so glad that you're here listening to this. I feel so, so grateful that you have chosen to just spend this time with me in your ears, yabbering about. And I do hope that part of you has resonated. But to circle back, please do come and connect with me. Do come and share with me what all of this feels like for you and what you'd love to learn more about as well, because I am starting to plan the next few podcast episodes as well. So please let me know what pieces you'd love me to expand on. And if you really love what I'm talking about here, if it has piqued your curiosity, if you've been listening along to a few of the episodes and you are really interested and would like to learn more, I would love to work with you. There's a few different ways that we can work together. I do have some offers that are more self-paced. So I have a freebie called Begin Living in Your Rhythm. This is a beautiful 3-day experience. You get an email each day across 3 days that speaks to cyclical living, tuning into yourself, coming home to yourself, calling your energy back. There's a beautiful practice included, an energetic hygiene practice, which is a recorded guided meditation and is my absolute favorite. And the intention behind this offer is to give you an introduction into what it looks like to live in rhythm and for you to experience it in a really low pressure way. I also have a self-paced offer called Seed, which is available all the time, as is the freebie. And this is really your introduction into cyclical living. So there are master classes which help you to slow down, tune into yourself. We touch on cycle tracking, and I introduce you to working with the moon or the menstrual cycle. So you will be able to choose which one you want to work with, and I teach you sort of how to get started in that, and that's a really beautiful starting point, especially if this is all new to you. I also have my brand new membership, Held in Rhythm. We are currently just working on building that at the moment. I'm adding in guided meditations and visualizations and journal prompts and everything, but very soon it will be including all sorts of trainings and workshops. There will be a Wheel of the Year workshop which explains in detail working through the seasonal wheel. There will be a lot of information around reclaiming this women's wisdom and moving through your life in a more cyclical way. This is going to be a place for you to come when life feels hectic and you need to be held and heard. There's a group space as well, so you get support from me, but also get to connect with other like-minded women. And you can also work with me one-on-one. So Germinate is my private integration support. We work together for a week in Telegram, so it's not a live call. There's no pressure to be on for 1 hour and try and get, everything out of it in that time. We work together over a week, so it's designed for all of us living our busy lives, and we can voice note and message back and forth in Telegram over a week so that you have space to reflect, you have space to respond and ask questions, and then I obviously am there supporting you and guiding you through the whole way as well. So just a little highlight of how you can work with me at the moment. I'd love to hear from you, and it would be my absolute honor to guide you in whichever way feels good for you. Come and say hi on Instagram. If you haven't said hi lately, I'd love to have a chat. Hand on my heart, thank you so much for listening today. I want to invite you into a moment for integration, because consumption of knowledge is great, but where it turns into wisdom is when we reflect and bring it into our own lives. So my invitation here is to reflect for a minute on what's been shared today, and then choose one tiny step you can take to bring those lessons into your life. Take a deep breath and devote yourself to that step today. With my deepest gratitude, I am so honoured that you have chosen to listen to this episode today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Be sure to check the show notes for any relevant links, references, and resources. A final note that this podcast is a space for sharing personal stories, experiences, and inspiration. It's not medical or professional health advice. By listening, you accept full responsibility for how you choose to take or apply any of the information shared. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. You are a sovereign being. Always follow your heart and choose what feels best and true for you.